Some listeners have been reaching out to us regarding some episodes that have been dropping off Spotify. So I wanted to just take a moment here before we jump into our topic for this week and kind of let everyone in on what's been happening. We have intro, outro music that is downloaded copyright free from Harris Heller on streambeats.com. We've used it for 2.5 years and never had an issue. But all of a sudden something changed. I'm not sure if it's a Spotify thing or Harris Heller thing, but I did reach out and got a use license agreement and everything's kosher. But I've been battling with Spotify for the last, how long now? 6 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that. And they've taken down 4 episodes. We're trying to get them back up. So if you're listening to us on Spotify and you've noticed that episodes have been dropping off, don't worry. Go to YouTube and check it out there. We're not having any issues there.
Steven's operating as the SuccessFlow podcast general counsel and chief legal officer at the moment.
I am throwing on my attorney hat and trying to get through this process, but we're getting it figured out. And if you notice last week's episode, it's still up. And you want to know why? It's because we changed the tune. You may recognize a new intro, outro music. I got to give a shout out to my guy, Holden Payton, who's a local guy here that is just getting into the game of producing some tunes for us. And I asked him to build us a custom song and we liked it. So we added it to this podcast. So thank you so much, Holden. I appreciate that. And we'll just continue to rock with it for, the next, however long. And I think we're talking about maybe doing a refresh, rebrand, kind of up in the level and up in our game here on this podcast going into next year. And that really kind of brings up the topic of what we're getting into for today. And as we wrap up Q4, as we get closer to the end of the year, we've got a short timeline and we don't want to be planning this stuff in January, February. So you broached the topic earlier this week. What can we accomplish this year in such a short timeline to be able to set the ground, set us up for success going into 2026? So hit it with us. Let's go and let's dive in, Phil. What do you got?
Yeah, per usual, it's that time of year, right? We try to make this applicable for the listeners in general perspective of what's going on right now and what's top of mind. And right now, it's strategic planning time. Whether you like it or not, 2025 is just about in the books. The holidays are approaching, and I am sure the number one thing is there are open loops that need to be closed out. I know I have them. They are top of mind, prioritizing what can be done in 25. There is still time to make magic happen. But at this time of year, unless you want to be going into the holidays and a January that is chaotic and reactive, it's time to strategic plan, start designing 26. So the theme for today is really around compressing timelines and designing 2026. And a couple of the key reflections that we were going to do a deeper dive on a book called The 12-Week Year. We don't have 12 weeks left, so roll with us there. But the real idea here is to look at examples of how we can compress timelines, again, utilizing my favorite topic, flow states and deep work, to get a real grasp and a playbook ready for 26 so we're not going in reactive at the end of the year.
Yeah, I love that. I love that we do this every year. We always do kind of a Q4 finish, and each year I think we get better and better, and because we're actually implementing things. Like last year we talked about, okay, well, what is I'm a big fan of theming out your year, like coming up with the word going into next year of how that year is going to be, but starting the process now of what that word's going to be. The turn of the calendar year is such an odd thing to me because it's all like. It's a new calendar year, but it's just another day, right? January 1st is just another day in the grand scheme of life, but we get this opportunity to have a finish to one year and a start to a new year. So it changes our perspective of, okay, I can put the past in the past. I can leave that there. It's not as easy as like, oh, I can leave September behind me because now it's October 1st. Once January 1st hits, like, oh, I can leave 2025 behind me because now it's 2026. It's a little bit easier when you have this turn of the year. And so we have this opportunity to finish Q4 strong, but we don't have a lot of weeks left, like you said, in 2025. So how do we use compressed timelines to finish what we haven't finished, what we set out for 2025? If we set goals for ourselves and maybe we haven't even started some of them and maybe we won't finish them, but how can we get to the point where, okay, I've only got 6 weeks left. I've got to start working on this now because I said I would, and it's important to me because of X, Y, Z. So now I've got to carve out those cave days and get into those flow states and figure out where I can find the time to start moving the needle towards that things. And then it'll just give you the momentum going into 26 to finish out what you set forth in January 2025.
Absolutely. I think we'll start off with something practical, mental, not necessarily a mental model, but I guess it's considered a law that we brought up on the podcast before, and that's Parkinson's law, which I use all the time because, I have a little bit of ADHD, and when sometimes my prioritization is off, I have to compress timelines. But if we proactively do it at a larger scale for our goals, that's when some true magic can happen and we can reframe our outcomes. So Parkinson's law, as a refresher, is the concept that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. The longer the runway you have for a task, the more we justify inefficiency or just procrastination. So compressing timelines forces a creative constraint. Our decision making gets better. We get more resourceful. And if you wait till the last minute, it only takes 1 minute to do the task. You've been there before. So the trick isn't to rush. It's to remove the wasted cycle time of indecision. So we'll talk about moving our end date down, false constraints of time, which as of right now, for those open loops and things we have to tie out 25, could be a great time to use that tool.
Yeah, Parkinson's law, you can use it in so many different areas, business, personal. You're giving yourself a goal and you've only got a certain amount of time. How many times have you said, "Oh, I've got a month to do this," and then you start it 5 days before the end of that month, right? Like it just happens. So, or you might start it in the first week, but then like the middle weeks, you're so far ahead of the game. You're like, "Oh, I'll just finish it," instead of just finishing it in the first 2 weeks. And now you got another 2 weeks to go work on something else or whatever, right? Like we do that
my
all
entire college career, Stephen.
Yeah. Cramming on Adderall or some shit, like you're just staying up all night trying to get it.
Never was able to partake in that, was jealous of that. But yeah, that was flowing in the library. But this is different than procrastination, right? We all, not we all, there are outliers that brains work linear and get the benefit of starting early and giving themselves time to refine and finish. But we do this to ourselves as self-sabotage. And what we're trying to do is flip that on its head and be like, okay, this is superpower. What if I use it to my advantage and put a false timeline that I make real in my head into the subconscious and use that to spring yourself into action and do better work?
Yeah. So being in the payroll industry, whenever we set up new clients, they're not false timelines. They are deadlines. Like we've got to get them up and running prior to their first check date, whatever that is set, whatever that was communicated from the sales process. Hey, here's the check date. We get information on it 2 weeks before that. We've got to build the client and implement the client. Like we are literally, sometimes we'll get like, I'll get hit up by sales and they're like, "Hey, do you think we could turn this around in a couple of days?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know I have the ability, or I know my team has the ability. Like, yeah, let's just do it." Right. So we're doing the same amount of work for this client and we do it in 2 weeks. And then we have a rush client and we're doing it in 2 days because we have the ability. And we're, your crunch timeline, you're like, okay, priorities, set the tasks and things I need to do today. These are the things I need to knock out. You get into flow state and all of a sudden you finding yourself, when you're locked in and you can get a lot of stuff done in a short amount of time. I love setting myself up for when the arbitrary timelines, like you said, false deadlines or whatever. I do love setting myself up for like, hey, if I said I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it by a Friday. Why? Because I just want to knock it out. I want to get it done. I'm not going to say next Friday or next month because I don't want to procrastinate. I don't want to wait. If I set myself that 5-day deadline and I know I need to do it, then it always ends up getting done. It's somehow, some way, it always ends up getting done.
Absolutely. And I think like as we give this overview, the goal is to give listeners, maybe shoot them down some rabbit holes that we've gone down. And if this is landing and you're looking at compressing timelines, one of the books I wanted to drive the readers to is called The 12-Week Year. Again, we don't have this time left in the rest of the year, but this works quarter after quarter. And this is exactly what we're talking about on compressing timelines. The core concept is you operate in a 12-week sprint as each quarter is a full year. Now, that sounds very easy and pie in the sky, like, oh yeah, just shrink time. But it forces you to identify inefficiency. It forces you to look at where the gaps are that you don't have urgency and clarity on. And it removes the time for drift or the someday. So some of the key practices are kind of what we talk about. You have to have a compelling vision that's emotionally tied. Just like our massive transformative purpose that we talk about on the podcast all the time, we shrink that down. What's the emotional tie to this next 12-week sprint? And then we measure weekly execution on a scorecard, put some metrics on. These don't have to be super detailed. The more detailed, the better. But then conduct a weekly reflection. How are you mapping? And even if you don't execute on the 12-week year, you are going to be so far ahead because you've tried to break it down in a quarter. So This is ambition, an ambitional goal to shrink timelines, but you can go deeper in this book should the readers choose to do so, or listeners.
Yeah, I like to use lofty output goals and strong input targets. So output goals are what the world sees, right? And usually lofty output goals are 1 to 2 years out, right? They're usually like, that's what the world sees, all the work you put in for 1 to 2 years. And then your strong input targets are the internal. It's the input. It's the work you're putting in behind the scenes, behind closed doors. It's the big iceberg underneath the water. And you have these input targets. So you're creating these quarterly goals that turn into monthly, or then you're backing into monthly, then you're backing into weekly, and you're backing into daily, and you're knocking out all of those things along the way. So that way you hit your targets, right? So you hit your targets. But what if we change the mindset of like, okay, my lofty output goal, what the world's going to see a year from now, what if I said, that's going to be my lofty output goal is going to be, what is the world going to see 90 days from now? And it's the same goal, but you move it to 90 days as opposed to 12 months. Because if we have 12 months, that's when urgency fades and that's when motivation lacks. And so if you move it to 90 days, how would your world change if what you thought you were going to achieve a year from now, you actually achieved a quarter from now? And what would be the updates and new goals that you would set for yourself if you achieve that initially quicker?
I love that you brought that up because this wasn't even on my radar, but this is the stuff that, like you say, the iceberg and behind closed doors, or the duck metaphor that you love to use, calm on the surface, paddling like crazy underneath. This is stuff that shows up and people call it luck. Like, oh, they're so lucky. Or people think you have superpowers. It's because they got something done that seemed unachievable or is extremely outlier. It's because no one sees this. Like, this is on you to compress these timelines. And it's not about, even though we're talking about it, this is stuff that you can do that are, again, this is outlier stuff. It's not, most people are not going to perform here. And it's really what you want. Like, are you looking to shrink time? Maybe you don't want to shrink time. Maybe you're good at the pace that you're working at.
Yeah. It goes back to what's the buy-in? Like, how much do you want it? Right. Once you define what it is that you want, who you are, what you stand for, and the things that you're trying to develop. I mean, do you actually want those things? Like, if you're not clear on that and you're not motivated to actually want to make a significant impact in the things that you're trying to build, you're not, I mean, it's too challenging to stay motivated if you don't actually want those things. So you got to get super, super clear on what you want. And then the consistency piece is the hardest thing in the world. Like, you're going to hit a wall. You're going to hit roadblocks. Can you continue to pursue and jump over the wall, blast through the wall, go around the wall, whatever it is you got to do? Can you, and the easiest way I can relate this to is just your health journey. Like, if you want to be healthier, you want to be more fit, you want to be around when you're a grandparent and playing with your, shooting hoops with your great grandkids when you're 80 years old. Dude, I saw a video the other day of like 6 80-year-olds playing 3-on-3 basketball. Now, it wasn't like super fast or agile, but the fact that they were out there shooting hoops with their buddies, like, that is my dream, is to be able to still be out on the court and shoot hoops when I'm 85 years old, 90 years old. But that all starts right now. And so I really, really want that. And so at a minimum, I'm making sure every single week I'm holding myself accountable. I'm keeping the consistency. I'm doing the discipline. At least twice a week, I'm getting in the gym. Now, I'm in a mode right now where it's like turning into 5 days a week, which is fantastic. But there's a lot of times where, even just short 2 months ago, which we had a side conversation about this outside of the pod, 2 months ago, September and October, it was kind of like, oh man, like feeling a little drab, like not as motivated to get in the gym or whatever. But I made sure that I see my personal trainer, had the self accountability, made sure he held me accountable to at least twice a week. That way I was able to get over the wall, and now I'm past that roadblock, and I'm like, my mindset's back into, well, it's go time. Like it's freaking go, because I've had this goal for so long to be fit, healthy, or whatever, 40 years from now, that I'm going to stick it no matter what, keep the consistency to at least hit the minimums to maintain, knowing that this is temporary. And eventually I'll get back to the motivation of wanting to get in the gym and keep active 4 or 5, 6 times a week.
Yeah. It wouldn't be the SuccessFlow podcast if we didn't somehow bring it back to the business athlete stuff for sports. And I wasn't planning on this either, but speaking of clips that you saw, I saw Will Zalatoris, and this is so perfect for this when we talk about compressing timelines, he was talking about kind of mid to higher handicappers, what they should be focused on. And all he said was like, get to the green faster. Yeah. And it's like, seriously, we get to, we in golf, you have these grand visions on how you're going to conquer a hole. And literally he's like, people do that. They get too creative and they try to bite off more than they can chew. They don't club up. And now you're trying to chip up and down to make bogeys. Like, get to the green faster. It's like, compress the timeline. And then once you get to that certain level, that's when you start chipping down on whole strategy, types of shots. Anyway, perfect example of compressing timelines.
Yeah, 100% is how do I do more with less? That's always a goal of any business owner too. Is like, how do I get more out of our production with less? What are the efficiencies I can find? And that's part of this too, is like, if you're doing things manually or the old way, well, yeah, you might be able to get away with that if you're trying to accomplish in 6 months or a year, but now you're trying to accomplish this in 12 weeks or 6 weeks. So what are the resources and what are the efficiencies I can add to this project in order to knock it out sooner? All right. So I'll prompt you with a question. Can you think of a project or something in your life or business or whatever, where you had a tight deadline and it led to your best work? Like, you were super successful with you didn't set it. It just, you had to deliver in a short amount of time because of the circumstances, and you knocked it out of the park. Do you have a situation?
Yeah, I think that I have a few of them, and I say this, it started in my career and life by accident, and then it just kept happening, but winding up over my skis, like putting into a situation where I didn't have the skill set. And you say it all the time, if you get a chance to jump on a rocket ship, like, just take the seat and figure it out. Yeah. But definitely the first, call it, promotion I got at Workiva that worked really hard to move teams onto, I was over my skis. The skill set wasn't there, and I had no choice but to compress the timeline with good leadership and finding the resources to remap what day-to-day activity looked like operating systems, approach to entire client acquisition and the sales cycle totally changing. There was no choice. There wasn't time to have 6 months or 3 quarters to slowly grow. And per usual, it was one of the biggest seasons of growth in my life, because it was forced. It wasn't, and that was, I guess you could say, it was self-compressed, but in my mind, there was no choice, and wound up leading to not only a decent year that year, but a career year the year after. And then the thermostat was raised, right? And there's a number of those of just getting over your skis, out of your comfort zone. Sound like cliches, but those have always been the seasons where these timelines wind up collapsing, whether you like it or not. Yeah, for sure. And if you have any sort of self-worth, self-accountability, like perception of how what's your delivery? If you're going to be working on something, like, do you want to be known as the person that can't deliver, or do you want to be known as the person that can? And you have to you have to figure out what the best way to make it happen with the amount of time that you have, with the resources that you have. And the more times you build the evidence and you set up these short time spans and you get these opportunities where you're challenging yourself on purpose and you're saying yes to things that are hard, not saying yes just because it's comfortable and easy, but you're actually challenging yourself on purpose. It builds that confidence. It builds that evidence to become a figure outable type of person. And that allows you to deliver in short spurts or timeframes. Like, how many times have you said yes, not knowing if you can do it or not knowing what the outcome will be, but you're holding yourself to a high regard, or high agency is a term that we've heard a lot. And you say yes because you're just going to end up figuring it out. Like, I don't care what the timeline is. You give me a project. I may not love it.
I may not like that I have to do this quickly, but I know at the end of the day, this is the world, this is the situation we're in, this is the circumstance we're in. Well, I'm not going to let it fail because I don't want anyone to think that we can't deliver. And that goes across business, goes across life, goes on everything. Right. So I love the promotion one when you get these promotions and you're like, I don't know if I could do this, but this is what I've always wanted. I've wanted growth. So I've got to deliver. I can't drag this out. Like I got to impress. I got to make moves. Otherwise I may not have this 6 months from now.
And I think it goes back to, and I'm going to volley the question back to you with a little twist. It's back to that uncertainty thing, right? We as humans hate uncertainty, and it's the only constant that's in our life. So it's like, if you can get your nervous system or what your subconscious, whatever you want to, and I'm still figuring this out, to move for you and just perfect timing into the storm, bison, running straight into that uncertainty.
That's a great hat.
Perfect timing. But if we can habituate that, which is easier said than done, that's what life's all about. It's just a more fulfilled existence rather than fear and coasting. So for you, I guess on that uncertainty theme, what is an example where you thought you were going to need to compress the timeline and maybe there was no shot that was going to happen and the timeline wound up extending, but it worked out better? Or you can just say a time where it worked out. But I feel like you've got a good one where the timeline may not have worked to your exact calculation, put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's one going on right now where I have a big goal that I set 18 months ago, and I'm nowhere near where I am, and I have not actually used this. Let me take that back. Okay, so I wrote the newsletter for like 2 years, right? I wrote that like every week, the Output Flow storybook. And that was kind of as I was building out the framework and the mindset and all that stuff and sharing it with the workshops and all those types of things, which was a huge growth year and a big learning moment. But the writing piece, I always said I wanted to get to 100 of them. And I always said that I would eventually, like as a kid, I've always wanted to be an author and write a book. And, I didn't know what it was going to be about, but I just enjoyed it. And so the newsletter gave me an opportunity to just write. I was like, well, why don't I turn this into a book? And 18 months ago, remember at the Junto Summit where we did the time capsule letter?
Oh yeah.
And we wrote a letter to ourselves and we locked it up for a year. And then a year later we'd read it. And we were supposed to write things that we wanted to accomplish in that 12 months or what our goals were or whatever. Well, one of the ones that I accomplished, like, I'm going to have the first draft of a book written. And I didn't hit that goal. Like it didn't happen. But I think I almost set the timeline too long. And if I would have said it, hey, I'm going to get this draft done in 90 days. Like if I were to change my perspective and say, I'm going to get this done in 90 days, and then I can fine tune and do whatever. But if I can at least get everything out and into like a structure, I bet you I would accomplish that goal way better than saying I'm going to do this a year from now. And I have not pulled the trigger on that. I have not set, like that is still a goal of mine. I still want to be able to author a book and just have like a legacy book, not even for anything other than just to have something that I can give my kids and great grandkids and just people in general. And just, like, hey, this is something that helped me go through my entrepreneurial journey, to recognize opportunity and all that good stuff. And so having it in written form is just like a gift giving type thing. I don't expect it to like be a revenue driver for me, but it's more of just a goal. Like I think it's something really cool, but I have not accomplished that. And I'm not even like halfway through that. And so I'm not upset about it, but I am kind of like, I set the timeline too long and I lost, like I go in spurts where I had the urgency and then I had the drive. And then all of a sudden something happens like, oh, well, I said I would do it in a year, so I'm sure I'll knock it out. And I never ended up actually doing it. So it does bother me. I think about it a little bit, every so often. And I know eventually I'll pick that up, but I just need to get that mindset of like, okay, I'm doing this in 90 days. And I think that time is coming soon.
That's perfect example for this conversation. And I know for certain with what you've compiled, we've been talking about going through old journals and just, like all the documents that we have of being on this journey of just trying to get better and trying to design life. Like we have it there, but it's that effort of compiling it to what's unique and coming through our voice. I have no doubt that's coming. I wanted to. We're coming to the, speaking of compressing timelines, coming to the end here. But I know that he's a polarizing individual, but Elon is well documented on this philosophy of time compression, and wanted to call out that the way he puts it, humans live with artificially extended timelines. This is back to stoicism, kind of reflecting on your death. You really don't have that much time. And it's not to be morbid. It's literally, we just think time's going to extend forever. And in his companies, he challenges his teams to have the time it should take and then figure out how to make it real. Again, do they hit every time? No. But if you can get a rocket into space, I bet you can do something within your small business or within as a leader in your company or an individual contributor. I'm sure you can do it too. And even if you miss, you'll move 10 times as fast as your peers or competitors. So it's back to speed reveals inefficiency. Yeah. And we don't want to work sloppy and reactive in the speed sense, but we want to compress time and increase focus and amplify those learning cycles. And it's engineering urgency.
It is. And it forces you to be creative, and it forces you to pivot, and it forces you to use your brain and think outside the box. All of those things. Like if you're coasting, nothing's happening. No growth is actually happening. So when you put those, like, hey, I'm going to get a rocket into space and I'm going to do it by this date. Well, shit. Well, let's figure it. And even if you don't hit it by that date, but you were locked in and you were doing everything you could to hit that date, you're going to have growth. Like, you're going to have the outside the box critical thinking. You're going to have creativity. It's 100% a fact that that's going to happen. And it just makes you better as it makes your business better, it makes you better as a human being. It makes you better, in all of the goals that you're trying to achieve.
I love it. I think we're putting a bow on this.
Yeah, I like it. Not like a Christmas. We're not a Christmas bow yet. We still got 6 weeks. People are starting. Kim wants to decorate for Christmas already, and I go, can we just at least wait till Thanksgiving? She's pretty hard. We might have Christmas decorations in the house in the next week. It's just wild.
There's still Halloween candy in my house, and I'm going to throw it away today because it's not good to have around.
Dude, candy corn. Fuck. Get that out of my house. Oh, God.
All right.
We'll wrap this up. I love this topic every year.
Like, subscribe. Thanks for the patience with our music rights challenges, and we will be back at you next week.